Have you ever thought about how the awake among us might implement a spiritual plan of action to take back our planet?
Yes, that's the theme of the last chapter of the Atlantis book, is solutions. I am very solution-oriented.
Yes.
It was never my intention to ever even get into writing anything about this subject without affording solutions. So in all my DVDs, and in the book I'm making, and in all the DVDs I produce, and even all the talks that I give publicly, it is very solution-oriented. And the solutions are very simple. First of all, we're being facilitated by being in the 21st century. Certain solutions could not be applied because the time was not right. So of course that has gained a lot of frustration. I understand that. People have been jaded, frustrated, they've given up hope. But what they have not maybe understood, which is known to good astrologers, is that the sidereal time, it must be right. That literally means, just as we say in daily life, the time must be right for something, well, so it is on the celestial level. The celestial timing has to be right. And the celestial clock has now moved into the right time. Just like the Maya calendar predicted, the last countdown of 13 years, from 1996 to 2012, is a time of awakening. They called it the Age of Revealing. It is very similar to the coming age of Aquarius. The planet Uranus, which represents the spirit of rebellion, is very prominent right now. So there are many ingredients that make it much easier for the truth to get out. Now, what truth? What solution? Well, first of all, know thine enemy is the most important beginning. And so my work is very much dedicated, as yours is, to just assisting people to know that there is an enemy and how to identify it. Because before you can do anything, you have to know that there is somebody shooting at you.
Oh, yeah.
So, before you can arm yourself up. It's just like the Bible said, know thine enemy. That's the first cardinal law, is to realize and then study this enemy. Don't act yet, but until you have full understanding. Then you have to have the patience to wait to find out what kind of weaponry that you must use, because ultimately this is not a weapon, this is not a fight of physical weaponry, this is an intellectual and spiritual fight, just like you said at the beginning of this interview. This is a fight that involves consciousness and transcendence of consciousness, and a shifting to a higher level of insight. I am 100% agree with you on that. And therefore, in the last pages of the Atlantis book, I kind of put it like this. I liken the coming of these secret societies, and I liken the intervention of these alien forces in ancient times to the coming of a virus into a cell, a healthy cell. We can imagine the Earth to be like a sort of a healthy cell, which is then infected by a pathogenic force. Well, as we know, if we're having that problem physically, there are two approaches. There's the allopathic and the homeopathic system. The allopathic system is just the slash-burn, methodology. Sure. The homeopathic system says strengthen your own immune system. I believe it's exactly the same advice we need to apply to the planet. We do not implement the solution per se. And that's why it's never worked. The human being, you see, is far too impotent, far too weak, far too backward to ever really do enough waving of placards, and certainly if he tries to do it in the political arena, he's just wasting his time. The Earth itself is a living organism. The Earth is a spiritual and living power that knows exactly how to rid itself of any virus or disease that has infected it. But we are, the human beings of the Earth, we could consider ourselves to be like the lymphocytes of the Earth. The only trouble is we have forgotten how to clean the Earth. It used to be in the shamanic times, we knew how to bring healing to the Earth. Because of all the massacres of the shamanic peoples and the Gnostics, and of the Wicca, and of the different oracles throughout time, these secrets have largely been lost. Just as the homeopathic tradition has been lost when we come to physical diagnostics and healing, so have these greater issues been lost. And they've been preserved by the dark side, so they're using it all the time. And the solution is for individuals to discover again their shamanic tradition that knows how to empower the Earth itself, because the Earth is the mainframe. The Earth is the central computer bank that knows how to get rid of the problem. We are only part of that solution, but the Earth is the one that itself knows how to rid itself of these pathogenic forces. The dark side knew this, which is why they always had a campaign of genocide when they expanded their empires. Genocide always attends the expansion of empire, because of course when they went to these foreign countries, Africa, India, and America, they knew that the shamanic people here were doing their dances, doing their rituals habitually at the right places of the Earth grid, at the right sidereal time.
Sure.
To affect healing in the world, and this is just one of the most important components of the healing. But on a lesser level, but still very important, is of course just simple education. People need to study the enemy, find out what's going on, collaborate as much as they possibly can. And one of the most important things, and I think you were already hinting at it earlier on, and this is really in my DVD on this subject, it's the number one thing, and that is to make sure that a person's own emotional body, that's their own emotional and psychic body, is already exercised and clean and hygienic. Because the individual who is not psychically and emotionally and morally hygienic has no chance whatsoever, capital W, in affecting positive change outside. The politician doesn't understand that, and the well-meaning activist doesn't understand it because they're not coming from the metaphysical tradition. They're just well-meaning good people who want to change the world, and unfortunately they head straight into the political pigsty to try and do that, which has already been created by the Illuminati, by these dialectical masters, so nothing ever gets done. If you, however, like myself, come from the occult, magical tradition, the mystical tradition, you do not even think of trying to affect change outside of yourself unless you have already initiated it within. This is the main issue why a lot of effort is being done, by the Amy Goodmans and everybody else in the world, and God love them, it's great to see that. But the point is that the weapons that are being used against us are occult in nature. Therefore, we have to respond in kind with occult weapons back. And in occultism, in the mystical tradition, you cannot do that unless you have first been purified by fire and water. That means trial and tribulation.
Sure.
So that you can withstand the kind of, the challenges that are going to come to you when you take on these forces.
Sure.
Give this information out to people. It's absolutely vital, because if they arm up and head out against these kinds of forces who are extremely matriculated on the spiritual path, they don't realize that the dark side is very powerful, because it has done its homework. It knows every aspect of our nature, every aspect of our libido, every aspect of our drives, every aspect of our desires, our sexual nature, you name it. They have a thorough working knowledge of the species that they have helped, that they actually once created. We have next to no knowledge of them. So we're working at a massive deficiency here. We're working in the dark. But that darkness can be lightened up if we start to do our own spiritual homework. You become invulnerable. You have the best weaponry of all. Do not try to fight these individuals in the arena that they have themselves created.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You come in.
Sure.
But unfortunately, the Western world is not understood. And even though some fantastic activists are out there, the problem with these individuals who work strictly in the political arena is that they're not going to see real change because they're fighting with the weapons that have been handed to them by their enemy.
Absolutely.
So it becomes a tug of war that is going nowhere. In fact, the rope that you're pulling is actually end up strangling yourself. It's the old Bruce Lee. The answer is the old Bruce Lee Zen Taoist way, and that is when you are so inherently strong that your enemy cannot destroy you, then you have won. When you are so inherently strong that your enemy cannot destroy you, then you have won.
Have you ever come across hostility to these ideas? And how would I present this material to somebody who is stuck inside of an organized religion structure?
Right, well, that's questions that are always on my mind because, of course, I have lived with nothing but hostility. It's not been the question of whether I've received or met with hostility. It's I've met with nothing else but hostility.
Yeah, sure.
I was born.
Yep.
It is an extremely pleasant experience when you go on a show or you speak with a group of people. As I must say, it does happen. Obviously, in America, I've been surprised by the overwhelming interest in these subjects. But on the whole, in one's daily life, in one's intimate circle, oh my God, there's nothing but all kinds of egoistic, knee-jerk, defensive reactions against any kind of light, any kind of truth. So, yes. Now, my answer to you is exactly the same answer I've employed in my own life, and that is I do not bother trying to ever engage anyone that I can see is lost in their own miasma because it just wastes my energy. I have learned very clearly how to economize the energy. These individuals also need to be where they are. When you see somebody in darkness, don't automatically rush out to try and save them. It's not needed. Individuals who are in that kind of mind think, they need to be in that mind think. That is where they are at this stage of their destiny. I do not believe, you see, that we need to awaken all of the people all of the time in order to affect great changes in the world. This is completely has no mystical precedence whatsoever, and I don't know where it ever came from. I know it's born out of a virtue. I know that everyone wants to, help everybody else. But the only one that you can help is yourself. When you then offer forth knowledge, you do so as a gift to humanity, not to human beings. There's a difference. Humanity is a concept. Humanity is a thing that has not yet been born in the world. But if you try to go out altruistically serving human beings, your life will be a perpetual tragedy. So again, this needs to be understood, that I am not a martyr. I do not believe in selling this information to the swine of the world, or trying to enlighten fools. And the reason is there are too many great souls who have already gone to their grave that way.
Sure. Yeah,
I am not worried
absolutely.
about, trying to save the people who will drag you down into their mess and who will try to darken you with their confusion. Those people who are out there who need to learn the light will learn that truth, whether it's from you, whether it's from me, or whether it's from some other complete other source that we could never fathom. It's pure egoism to think that we have to be there with our knowledge to give it to somebody. When that time comes for that person to be awakened, they will be awakened by their own higher source, will lead them wherever they need to go. So it takes the onus off of us. A lot of people who charge around trying to awaken the world are actually some of the most vain people that you'll ever come across. Yes, they disguise that vanity under what appears to be a necessary, positive thing. But underneath that thing is ultimately a great deal of vanity.
I wonder if you could comment on the role symbolism plays in the Illuminati agenda.
Well, it plays the central role. So one of the things that got me into all of this subject is just what you've spoken about. From 13 years of age, I was studying corporate symbolism and subliminal imagery, and I didn't know at that time that it was occult in nature. I was just wondering, what in the hell is this stuff doing here? I didn't realize that one day would come when I would realize the reason that these symbols and colors and rhythms and tones and sigils were being used. And now I've talked all over the world on this very subject and have a DVD coming out that goes very deeply into all of that and why they use it. Again, it's to empower themselves and it's to dumb us down. These ancient symbols that are very powerful are therefore very attractive to our ancestral mind because we recognize them. Our soul recognizes them. But if they take the symbol of Mars, which has some very positive spiritual meaning, if they take the circle or the pentagram or the sun, all of which are connected to spiritual states of consciousness, and they stick it on a bar of soap or on a stupid car or some toothpaste, what is happening is actually something incredibly satanic is taking place. What is happening is that we are being attracted by the symbol because that symbol once had to do with our spiritual uplift. But now that symbol is on something that is going to pull us down into our lower chakras, into our lower drives, and into our appetite body. So we, with one hand, are reaching out for it, but with another hand, we are resisting it. So what happens is we're in inner conflict. We want what that symbol represents, but we realize that it's on some stupid material thing that's actually helping to impoverish us. So the people who use it keep us in a perpetual state of conflict. And this causes a lot of, it's a laundry list of psychic and sexual maladies. These symbols cause this. Subliminally, the children are watching TV. All of their young adult shows that they watch in the morning are filled with the most evil, satanic, sexualistic symbolism. The parents are not even aware of it. And this is affecting the constitution of the young, which is very much concerns me. And it's always infecting our mental space as we, drive down the boulevard. You're seeing all of this symbolism. And we have to understand, you see, what these elites understand. And that is words are a very recent form of communication in the history of the mind and in the history of human beings. Language, communicating through words and language is very, very recent historical phenomena. Before we had the gift of language, men and women used to communicate by symbolism, by colors, by rhythms, by numbers, by sound, and on mudras and all sorts of things like that, by amulets and talismans. They would communicate very deep things that words still cannot communicate. So these individuals are working on the deeper levels of our mind so that they can control those deeper aspects of our mind, and that way also then control our conscious mind. Yes, we do have a barrage of this psychic weaponry coming at us. But the real key is that even though that's coming at us, if the parents were able to instill a center in these children, it wouldn't matter what's coming at them. They'd be armored to the teeth with spiritual center and with a strong sense of selfhood, and therefore they'd be pretty much impervious to these things. So it's not just the fact that, yes, okay, it's Big Brother, it's a psychic dictatorship out there that's sending the stuff towards us. Yes, of course it is. But you also have the choice to be able to defend yourself. Now, we are living in a society where the parents are literally so gaga about this, so undereducated about this, so toxic with it themselves that they bring children into the world and basically, put them in front of this mess without censoring it for them. The child is not responsible. So therefore, yes, it's a combination. There's no center in the child. The real problem is that there's nothing in the child, so naturally it's going to turn to what it appears to be, what appears to fulfill its fantasy, its spiritual component. The parents of the world are not spiritually empowering or enriching their children, so the children have no alternative but to turn to what appears to be the spiritual oracle, the spiritual feeder. That's how the devil works. That's how the satanic force works. It puts on the mask of the friendly one. Just like Spielberg showed in this Poltergeist, it has a way of luring you in with these sacred symbols, and sacred meanings. And for instance, television, even why adults are attracted to it, is because it's the one thing that you don't have to give anything to in order to get something back. In all other human relationships, you see, there's a give and a take. It does everything for you. All you got to do is sit back, lie there passively, and it does everything for you. And this, of course, becomes very necessary in human life because we are giving every ounce of our energy 24 hours a day for nothing back. So, you see, we have to look outside the medium itself to find out why would we be addicted to this? What is it that we're missing? What is it that we're susceptible to that we would even move towards this kind of thing? We have to find out the psychology of it. And then when we find out the psychology of it, and people like Jerry Mander, the great writer, have written on this, and several other writers, and that is that we have to put out so much psychic and emotional and psychological energy in daily life that part of us is just sick of it, because we're not really able to get the things that are sustaining us. The television, which David Icke called the psychiatrist in the corner of the room, which is a great term, television is like our best friend in a way, and for children it's like that because it's not asking anything from you, and it's giving you, relatively speaking, plenty back. So you see, the parents of the world need to understand this concept so that they can redo the balance of realizing that when you ask the human mind to give, but it doesn't really get anything that it really inherently needs or wants, it will turn elsewhere. And these Madison Avenue think tank individuals are so sophisticated, so incredibly psychologically astute, that they know this, and they understand how to then communicate to the child through the television that this is your spiritual oracle. So naturally, if you think that something is spiritual, you're not going to want to let go of it. It's a conditioning, it's a mixed message that is being given to us, and the only way to crack it is not to turn off the TV or beat the children over the head or blame the society, or lament and throw millions of dollars at the problem, which of course America will always find a way to do that. No, the problem is to psychologically become empowered to realize what is this thing offering that we should be offering, but we're not. America is going through an underworld cycle in which it can now start to do what it has never done before, and that is clean its own psyche, because it's the filth and toxicity of its own psyche that is bringing about the George Bushes of the world, that's allowing it to be controlled by forces unseen, and that is allowing it to go down the road to destruction. The root of all of that is inside the self of each individual. The collective psyche is very, very dark and toxic in America, and it has to be cleaned out, and the process of cleaning that is now going to start taking place. It already has from 1996, but as every year goes by, more and more and more of that is going to happen. And why the elites of the world are starting to do a lot of saber rattling and starting to move forward with their New World Empire, Leviathan idea, is because they know that their time is short. Should individuals start to do this psychic homework, they understand what it means for them. So therefore, they're moving quickly to continue an onslaught of lies and deception and war and chaos, because, of course, those who are in chaos inside themselves prefer a climate of chaos, then they don't stand out as much, right?
Sure. Right.
Yeah, well, the consciousness of all of these so-called leaders and all of the people behind the scenes, the Brzezinskis and what have you, these people are so dire, filthy, and toxic inside their hearts and minds. Like the Bible says, the scorpions will come out of their hearts and they'll be saying, where do these scorpions come from? Well, these individuals are so absolutely toxic that they prefer to create mayhem all over the world, because then they feel, acclimatized to that. So there's going to be a counter move from these forces to create worldwide Dionysian bacchanalia in order just for them, basically, one of the reasons is just to feel acclimatized, just to feel good. And Then, connecting to my work on Atlantis, is another component to this. In the ancient books, it is saying that some of the original alien masters, they have very long lives, but they do eventually pass away. But in ancient times, it turns out that some of these beings were actually interred in a sort of what you might want to call suspended animated state. And in fact, they can be revived. And so some of the legends are saying that the dark side might stoop to doing this. They may, in fact, awaken some of these true Antichrist, Nephilim, fallen angel beings that are interred in the earth. And the ancient legends are saying that some of these beings are interred in Iraq. Because after all, that's where their empires were first after Atlantis fell. That's where they set up shop later on. And underneath the soil there, underneath the dirt, hundreds of feet deep in underground caverns that the ordinary Iraqi Muslim people haven't the faintest idea which exists. From satellite, they know where these underground tombs are. So just like vampires that are in a sort of a state of suspended animation, some of these legends are claiming that these old Nephilim are still alive and can in fact be revived. It's a very elaborate story of how they do that, and it involves genetic hybridization and all sorts of necromantic subjects. But if they were ever to awaken these beings, and the Bible says that they will, we could be in very, very serious trouble. So there could be literally another war of Armageddon in the sense that these beings are loose in the world. And then we're going to really find out something very interesting if that should ever happen. And this is one of the reasons why the museums in Iraq were looted during the first moments that the troops went in. We know that these sacred objects, very, very sacred ritualistic objects, were appropriated and stolen from these museums, and nobody has been able to explain why, not even William Henry and others. And I know why, and you will know why, because in any kind of magical ritual, it is extremely important to not only have the sidereal time right, but you must be dressed for the part, so to speak, meaning that you have to have the right ritual objects that are needed for certain kinds of packs.
Yes, sir. Yes.
For certain kind of rituals. And therefore they have many of these, but they didn't have a few others. And they knew that these were in the museums in Iraq, and they took them because there's going to be occult rituals of a massive magnitude being done, as they already have been throughout the century. And this could mean they're arising. Just like in Revelation 22, it says, those who were not, and who will be again, will arise from the bottomless pit. There's reason to believe that some of the original fallen angels will be revived to preside over a world of total New World Order and chaos.
Oh, wonderful.
These are the reptilian eye that you see at the top of the dollar bill's pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, you see a two-dimensional eye. And it's always been put before us that that's the eye of Ra, or the eye of the sun, and it is not. It is the eye of Jehovah. It is the eye of the Nephilim, the fallen ones who rule over all mankind, above the 13th level. So this is another one of these strategies that they're ready to employ, and I go a lot into it in the forthcoming book and in other presentations that I do.